Good evening. We welcome you to another episode of Relate to This. I am your host, co-hosting with me, my host, Dr. Siegfried Howell. I am Jay Tross. Welcome, Dr. Howell, once again to another wonderful show.
Hey, listen, I've been told that I smile too much, so I'm going to try not to smile too much, but I can't help it. When you're happy, you're happy. When you like what you're doing, you smile. No, you didn't tell me that I smile too much, but
Well, I didn't tell you that, but I'm curious to know who did tell you smile too much.
well, a lot of people say that I'm a little too playful for a doctor, and so I try to keep a serious face, but it's
So,
hard.
but let me ask you this:
Yeah,
before you were a doctor, who were you?
a playful person with a master's,
Okay, before you had a master's, who was you?
a playful person with a bachelor's,
Before you had a bachelor's, who was you? Who was you? Who were you?
a playful person with an associate's degree.
Before education, who were you?
I was an embryo.
So between an embryo and education, you were nothing.
That's the associates and the bachelors, the masters, and the doctorate.
So based on what you're saying, is people relate happiness to being a baby
Yes.
or just a twinkle in your mom's eye.
Matter of fact, I'll go one step further. They say that kids, especially like kindergartners,
Mm-hmm.
they will smile between 200 to 400 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
Most adults smile less than 50 times a day. And so as we get older, we lose the innocence that we have for happiness and life and enjoyment, to the point that when you see people laughing and you serious, a lot of times we end up hating them because we're like, what are they so happy about? I don't have nothing to be happy about like that. And we either envy them or we hate them,
Hmm.
but we don't just celebrate them. But why is it that when we see a baby laugh, we get into that mode where it just warms us? But when you see adults laugh, a lot of times we don't feel that happiness anymore. We want to know, don't they have any responsibilities?
Well, I'll be totally I'll be transparent.
Okay.
I don't think there has ever been a day in my life
Mm-hmm.
that I have, number one, have not laughed,
Mm-hmm.
number two, have not joked,
Mm-hmm.
and number three, have not laughed. Joke, laugh, right? I mean, because I'm in my 40s and
Mm.
I'm not in my low 40s, right?
I remember those days when I was
I,
in.
I I'm I'm in my high 40s now, and I have not had a day where I have not literally, number one, like I said, laughed or have joked with somebody and made them laugh. Because to be honest with you, this is I look at it like this. This is my 2 cent for today. This is for our listening and viewing audience. This is the part where I get paid right here. This is my pay. This is where I get paid. You know, Dr. Howe, he gets paid from counseling and coaching and book sales and all those things. From I get it right here. So Dr. Howe pays me for my 30 seconds. You know, he only pays me like 10 cents, you know. But hey, listen, $3 will work for
You're
me.
only supposed to have 15 seconds, 15 seconds of fame.
Right. But I equate this is my equation for a happy life, right? This is my equation for a happy life. Here it is right here. If you can cry, if you can laugh, if you can empathize, and if you can sympathize, you can have a happy life.
Okay. All right.
Because because that's what's in our DNA. That's the real part of your DNA. And if you can do those, then you can be all right, right?
Yeah.
If you find yourself in trouble or hurting and you can't cry about it, then you're not really living.
Mm.
If you find yourself in a joyful situation, Christmas, or you're at a comedy show, or you're watching a funny movie and you can't laugh, you're not living. And if you come up to somebody who is going through something, and you can't empathize with them, or you run into somebody that's running has the same issue with that you're having, and you can't sympathize with them, then to me you're not really living. I think it's in our DNA, and when you go outside of your DNA and you try to create something that's not really there, that's just me. So I'm putting my 2 cents in, and Dr. Howe, later in the episode, if you want to straighten that out, you can. But I think that is the I think that is the equation, part of the equation. I see I'm leaving open, part of the equation to being happy.
Yes, yes, yes. I feel you.
So for me, laughter is really the best medicine, but you got to cry a little bit in there too, just to kind of have that balance. You know what I mean? Because
Yes,
every
sir.
day, yeah, because every day ain't gonna necessarily be happy. So,
Yeah.
but if you can find happiness in the day, come on now.
Mm, 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 mm.
Everything gonna be all right. Hey, listen, we started the show because Dr. Howe has something on his heart to bring out, and so, but we want to let you know this is relate to this. This is a program that is specific to relationships. It's specific to friendships. It's specific to interpersonal relationships, and it is brought to you by none other than MEI, Making Education Intentional. As we say every time we do this show, our CEO sits right on the other side of the screen there, Dr. Siegfried Howe. So once again, we always thank you for this time that we share. You're putting your money where your mouth is, right
Yeah,
here on
I've
this
never
show.
liked that term, by the way. Never ever do I want to put my money where my mouth is. I can put my
Actually,
money where my pocket is.
that's some dirty money right there. That's some
Yeah,
dirty money.
put my money where my hands are. But
All that's basically saying, Dr. Howell, is listen, if you're going to talk about it, you got to be about it. You know what I
yes,
mean?
sir.
Bring
Yep.
the thunder. We want to just get right. We'll do a little more housekeeping, Dr. Howe. We are live on YouTube. We also, for those who are watching this on another day, this will be put in the vault, and it will then premiere about 3 weeks from now. So some of you are watching it live. Others are watching this on syndication. We're gonna call it syndication. We're gonna claim it already,
All
syndication,
right.
because
Yep.
it will premiere 3 weeks, about 3 weeks from today. So you will get it then. But if you're watching live, uh, put something in the chat. Say, hey, I'm watching live. If you're watching on the syndication, when it gets on, say, hey, I'm liking this program, and I'm going through some things, and maybe you can answer some of my questions. But you can catch us on Wednesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Where we're back in Standard Time now, right? So Eastern Standard Time, you can catch us. Back to about that. Okay, we won't deal with that tonight. But anyway, we'll talk about standard time on our other show, Awkward Situations. We'll address the standard time and daylight savings time. But yes, just put in the chat like, here, I'm watching, I'm listening, I'm seeing you. But we're here, and what Dr. Howe does on this program, he addresses those questions that are less asked, less, or I don't want to say less, or some questions that are not really asked in relationships, or not really addressed. It's on your mind, but you don't bring it out. And he tries to answer those in a creative way so that we can all understand and promote good, healthy relationships. As I stated, this is not just for married couples or people who want to be married, but they're for anybody that has a relationship. And we're asking the question every night, right, Dr. Howe? Every episode, can you relate to this?
Yes,
So
definitely.
let's lay the foundation today. I'm gonna make the foundation easy for you tonight. You got a car with four wheels. but all the tires are flat.
Oh wow.
How are you going to get around? I'm just laying the foundation tonight, right? Everybody's sitting here like, what is he talking about? You're going to see exactly what I'm talking about when I'm throwing these questions out today. You have a car with four wheels and the tires are flat. How will you get around? So my question to you tonight, Dr. Howe, my first question I want to lay on the
Okay.
table, it has to do with promoting growth, right? You know, promoting growth in a relationship. And you do know that as we grow, it's like a tire, right? You know, as you put air in it, the car raises up, right? When the car is when the tires are flat, it's not doing that. And so my question to you, my first question that I want to put on the stage tonight is, how do you promote each other's growth as individuals, right? With friendships, hobbies, learning, and adventures outside the relationship. How do you promote that? And basically, how do you let your other half be your other half, or let them be their individual selves?
Well, look, that's a very loaded question. The first thing I want to say is this: we get attracted to people based on their oppositeness of us. And so, for example, I'm more outgoing than my wife. She's quieter than me. And so we attracted each other. But then once we get together, it seems like once you get married, people try to start changing each other. And so she was probably telling me, hey, you're too outgoing, you need to stay home more. And I'm probably telling her, hey, you're too quiet, you need to come out some more. And so we spent a lot of our relationships trying to change the person that we were attracted to. And then 10, 20 years later, we say, you're not the person I thought you were. But how can you be the person you were when you already, in every waking moment, you try to change them? And so I think that a lot of our relationships start off in a selfish way. We want to get something, I want to be quieter. She wants to be more outgoing. And we all want something from each other. But we have to remember, in order for a relationship to grow, you have to add value. And that's what one of my books is about. How do you add value to each other in a relationship? And one of the things that you have to do is to step outside of your comfort zone and let them be themselves. And so you're going to have your partner have other interests in you. And you have to show interest. I remember my aunt said, hey, you know what? I don't like football, but every Sunday I'm right there with my husband watching football because he's into football. And I show genuine interest, even though I don't like it, because that's something that's important to him. And I'm like, well, why are you doing that? He's like, because if I don't, someone else will. So she wanted to be the one that he talked to about his sports and about his team and about his players and all that stuff. So she wanted to fill that void. And so one of the things you can do is make sure you have genuine interest. Ask questions. Don't say, oh yeah, you off doing your boring thing again. Okay, well, I'm going to go out with the girls, or I'm going to go out with the fellas. When they come back, ask questions, find out what happened, show interest, And then another thing is, don't schedule stuff during the times you know that they're off developing themselves. Because one of the reasons why you like them is because of their differences. I remember one time when my wife and I were dating, I asked her a question. I said, well, what makes you different from all the other girls I know? And her answer blew me away. She said, because I know how to be cool, calm, and collected. I had never, ever heard a woman tell me some highfalutin stuff like that before. And so I was like, well, I want to know what that cool, calm, and collected was, because I definitely wasn't calm. I was cool, but I wasn't collected. And so I'm like, well, I want some of that right there. I want to see what some of that's about. And so we've taught each other our strengths along the way. for the last 30 years, she's been teaching me more about herself and life, and I've been teaching her more about myself and life. So we had to find a way to get out of ourselves and figure out what that person needed in order to enjoy life and become better. We had to cheer each other on and help each other. We had to be a support person, for a cheerleader, an advisor as they did their own hobbies or as they went to school and did things that were different from us. And so you have to show genuine interest. You have to validate them in every shape, form, or fashion so that they feel encouraged and so that they know they have someone that they can count on and support them when they need it the most. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. You because you said something that struck me a little bit. How do you so as you promote each other's growth, and you mentioned something about, hey, you're off doing your old boring thing, I'm gonna go out, hang with the girls, whatever the case may be. When you got into that relationship, you were individuals coming in, so you had your friendships, you had your hobbies, you were possibly adventurers, you were doing all those things. But then once you got into a relationship, it's almost like a lot of those things became non-existent, right? You have these, premarital counselors that are out there saying that, hey, when you get with a person or when you become married or whatever in a relationship, you got to let some of those friendships go. You can't be friends with, if you're married, you can't be friends with single people. And if you're married, you can't have these hobbies, or you can't do this, and you can't do this. But then you find yourself in a relationship lost, right? Because now you lost this friend because this friend is single, or you lost that friend because that friend is an alcoholic, or so it's all these different things. Or you can't do this hobby now because it's too expensive. You know what I mean? Like you can't do this, but when you're single, you were doing it. You can't be as adventurous as you wanted because you traveled around the world. So how do you say promote each other's growth, but then a lot of the things that were helping you grow before you were in a relationship, now those are kind of put to the side? What do you say to the new couple that they're trying to find their way, but they're also trying to reinvent the wheel? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like everything is like we became one. So everything that we were doing before is non-existent. So now we're trying to we're trying to put the wheels back on the car. You know what, Doctor? I like my foundation I laid tonight. It's kind of flowing together.
Yeah, those tires are coming along. All right, so let me just put this out there real fast.
Yeah.
When you get married, you become one, but not the same. A lot of times people try to make each other the same. Well, if you look back at the infamous slap, right before the slap, a joke was told. Mm-hmm. One person laughed, one person didn't. Mm-hmm. And when the person that laughed looked and saw that the other person didn't laugh, they changed their whole view on the situation, and now they went into panic mode and we're trying to avoid that uncomfortable ride home.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, if I don't laugh, why should you laugh? If I'm not happy, you shouldn't be happy. And a lot of times in relationships, if I'm mad, you have no reason to be happy, and I'm mad. And so we are selfish with the way we think about things, and we're selfish about the way we do things. But another thing you want to look at is boundaries. If you have friends that aren't married, or even friends that are married, you still have to put boundaries on your friendships, because before you were married, your friends had a certain amount of access to you. But once you become married, your access should be more towards the person that you said you'll spend the rest of your life with. And so anybody who cannot abide by the constraints of those boundaries should be shaken out of your life, because they're not good for you. Does that make sense? Okay, good. And so with that being said, you can have single friends as long as your single friends stay within their boundaries. So you should first have very outlined boundaries and you should know them, your friends should know them, so that they know if you step outside of these boundaries, then our friendship's going to have problems. I'm not saying that you cannot have single friends that, because you're married, but I am saying that if you know that there's a friend that's trying to get with you, and now you're married, that probably shouldn't be a friend that you should have, because it'll create a situation at some point in time, because that person has ulterior motives. So you should know the motives of the people around you, and so you can't just drop all your friends. My father has friends that are single. My father has friends that are married, but they all have boundaries. Another thing that I heard Jim Rome say it like this one time. He said, "Yeah, I have a friend that's a thief. He's a fairly good thief, but he's a good person." And the question is, well, how can you have a friend that's a thief? Well, I know how to accept him, because if I know he's a thief, I'm not going to put a situation in front of him that will cause him to steal from me. I know his boundaries. And so you can have friends that may not necessarily agree with what you agree with, but as long as they know the confines and the constraints that that friendship has to be maintained under, then everything should be fine.
Yeah, I definitely totally agree with that, and that leads us down a whole different road, and when our car is staying on this side of the road today. But you're right though, you can, and that's why it's important for us to navigate life in a personal way, and I mean personalize our lives, right? We can't go off of what Johnny life is like or what Nay's life is like, and all this kind of stuff. It's our own book, right? From cover to cover is our lives, not somebody else's life. You hold that whole term, the Joneses and the Johnsons and the Smiths.
Mhm.
Those names are famous names. Those are the names that last name, and you got a lot of people with those names. So you can't navigate your life like somebody else's. So your life is unique to you, and then once you get married or in a relationship, it's unique to you too. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So like you said, you can have your single friends, and and sometimes, let's be honest, it's the married friends that are worse than the single friends. You know what I mean? So sometimes, or all the times, you have to look at your own personal life and how you approach different things. You can't have that cookie cutter type of life. And if you live it that way, then you're going to miss out on the best things that you could possibly have in your life. Those friendships, those hobbies, those adventures, and all that kind of things. And I'm not saying that you and your single friend should take a trip around the world. You know what I mean? And that may be for you, that might be good, but it's all depending on that relationship. So I like that. Now, as you deal with relationships, and we know that as you get older,
Mhm.
some things change. Some wheels have to be changed. Some oil has to be. Oh boy, like, don't go with me on this. I'm just so as you get older, and we're kind of you're further along than I am, but I'm on my way, and
Yeah.
this is all about perspective.
Mhm.
But when you get to a certain point in your life, there's this thing called midlife, right?
Mhm.
That's that
Mhm.
midlife. Some people call it midlife crisis, but I'm gonna call it midlife challenges,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And so this is individual on this road by themselves with you. I mean, midlife crisis and challenges can happen whether you're single or in a committed relationship, right? The
Mhm.
question that has come forward, Dr. Howell, and a lot of people are going through this, and especially since COVID, right? COVID has kind of knocked a lot of people in different directions, especially when you were faced with the alone time in your life, right?
Yeah.
The question on the table, because I'm switching gears a little bit, is as you navigate midlife challenges, how can you be gentler with yourself and with each other? Now, let me kind of break it down a little bit for you
Okay.
in several different directions, right? As we progress in life, there's a lot of things that fall into this midlife challenges, right? One of those things that fall into it is career.
Okay.
Okay. Another thing is retirement funds. You know, what do I have available? Another piece of that is children growth. You may have children and they're growing, and college is coming up, and high school, and different things of that nature. Another thing that falls into this is health. All right, so you have these four pendants, if you will, of midlife. You don't start thinking about a lot of these things till you get into a certain age, certain category, if you will.
Hmm.
And when these things do occur, sometimes you become harder on yourself, right? And then sometimes you become harder on those who you love, or those who you hang out with or work with, and you kind of change. So the question on the table is this: how do you become gentler with yourself as you approach these midlife challenges?
Uh, well, I like stories. I have a story about this. My house has several alarms on it, and I remember one night I was sleeping, and the alarm went off, and my wife said to me, "Baby, the alarm is going off. Somebody's breaking into the house." And so I jumped out of bed, and my legs weren't ready,
Mm,
and I fell straight down onto the floor. And the reason why that gives me, why I'm chuckling about it, is because I have several black belts in several different martial arts.
mm-hmm,
And so I was getting up ready to fight, but my body wouldn't. And that's when I realized that I was getting older.
mm,
Oh, but that's about 8 years ago.
okay,
But recently, you remember, I fell off the ladder twice. I told you
right.
that story about me falling off the ladder. And so it let me see that I'm not as agile as I used to be.
Mm-hmm,
And so, what does all that mean? All that means is that you have to be empathetic with yourself. You have to have self love. You have to be able to talk seriously to yourself. Hey, buddy, you can't do some of the things you used to do before because your body isn't at that point anymore. Or, hey, you know what? That's not going to be the way you do things anymore because you're older now. You got to take time. You have to plan ahead. You just have to look out for yourself. And so I remember waking up with muscles that were pulling. I'm like, how do you pull muscles sleeping? Like,
mm,
weird things. And so you have to forgive yourself. You have to love yourself. You have to make sure that you are kind to yourself. I've heard people say, man, I'm so stupid, I'm so dumb, I'm so this. No, that does not help the situation when you're already feeling bad about yourself or feeling poorly about yourself. And so you have to have self-love. You have to have self-empathy. You have to talk nice to yourself. That inner voice in your head, you gotta learn to lift yourself up and say, hey, you know what, I gotta slow it down a little. And when it comes to your spouse, you gotta encourage them also to not be hard on themselves, because a husband or wife can feel like they can't perform or meet the needs or whatever of their partner anymore. And so now you might lash out at yourself, but in the process you're also lashing out at your loved one.
mm,
And so you have to be very careful to make sure that you don't aggravate a situation and make it even worse. And so you have to revisit your life's dreams and see if your life is still on track. But you mentioned career. If in your 40s or 50s your partner says, "Hey, I want to change careers," and it's not necessarily your right to tell them, no, you can't do that. Because suppose they continue that career and live their life in regret. And now they're 80, 90 years old and they could have done better. Suppose they had an idea that could have made millions, but you stopped them. I remember in college, my roommate, he talked about a self cleaning toilet, a toilet that would clean your bottom while you're in the toilet. And we laughed and joked about it. And 10 years later, from the French
mm,
country, France, they came up with a toilet that squirts warm water in your bottom and cleans you and stuff. Now, I'm not talking about the bidet. I'm talking about an actual toilet, you know. And so my friend thought of an invention. He never acted on it, and 10 years later, somebody came out with it.
Mm.
And so the same thing can happen. Suppose you get an idea in your 40s, 50s, and your spouse or your partner tells you, "Hey, you need to keep that money coming in because this is where we are in life," and then you live in regret because you never tried to make that thing and patent it, and now somebody else makes millions out of it. You might harbor resentment towards your partner and loathe yourself for not pushing yourself forward. And so you want to be able to reminisce fondly about yourself and the things that you've done when you are older, and your partner wants to be able to do the same. So you should encourage each other, lift each other up, and give them the confidence that they need to keep pushing forward. Let them know, I will support you because I know you will support me.
Right.
Don't make them feel bad about that situation, because the same way you want to do what you need to do is the same way your partner needs to do what they want to do. However, if finances is an issue, find a way to work towards getting the finances right so that they can um, reach their dreams. If the kids need to finish high school or college or whatever before you do your thing, find a way to make that happen so you can identify your dreams. And then there's a situation where there's a medical person that was telling me, and my sister also confirmed it. She was like, a lot of men die in their 50s because they don't go to the doctor.
Mm.
But if they can get past their late 40s, early 50s, they can probably make it to their 70s and 80s.
Mm.
Because that transition period, when you get a chest pain, when you're young, oh, it's gas, it's a Charlie, you know, it's something. But when you're in your 50s, it could be a mild heart attack.
Mm.
And so if we can just get past that, then we can realize some more drinks. Why is that important? Because a lot of times in our 50s, we don't think that we're getting old yet. But just like I fell off that ladder twice in 20 minutes, you realize that stuff is a little different. And hey, you know what? There's some things I want to do in life before I fall off a ladder and die, or before I get a heart attack or something. There's some things I want to do before I can no longer do it. And I want to know that I'm with someone who will help me and encourage me and be supportive when I do that thing. And I will be sure to do the same thing for them.
Right. Yeah. No. You're definitely right. I do like the last thing you said about, a lot of times it's not until something drastic happens where we decide that, you know what, I want to be able to do this before I die. I want to travel the world. I want to do this. I want to go to Disney. I want to buy a boat. I want to buy a Corvette. Some of these things, and these all contribute to that whole.
Motorcycle.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. And these are some of the things that all fall into would contribute to the midlife challenges, because something happens, whether it's a report at the doctor's office or something, and now you enter into that phase of, oh my gosh, and worries get into that, and fears get into that, and a whole lot of vulnerabilities. A lot of stuff fall kind of run towards you, right?
Mhm.
So I want to follow that up with when we're talking about the midlife challenges, and when we're talking about midlife crisis, and when we're talking about all these things, and we're talking about as you travel down that road, right? And we're talking
Mhm.
about that engine, and sometimes it starts to get loud, and the car is starting to slow down. And how do you tune into each other's fears, into each other's worries, into each other's vulnerabilities, and provide comfort and reassurance? So when I'm down and out, not that not that you, Dr. Howe, can give me the exact words to say to my loved ones or to my friends or whatever the case may be, but how can I tune in? And it goes back to when I said at the beginning, right? When I talked about, if you can cry, if you can laugh, if you can sympathize, if you can empathize, you're living life, right?
Mhm.
So how can I kind of tune in to the worries and fears and provide comfort and reassurance?
Well, there are two things you have to look at. You have to look at the empathy part, and you have to look at the vulnerability part. Because if your partner's not being vulnerable, then you really don't know what their innermost voice is telling them. You can only go with what you can see or what you can experience. But if they open up and they're vulnerable with you, then you can better help them with that. So let's look at it from this standpoint. In order for someone to be vulnerable, most of the time, we want a safe place. We need to feel like our thoughts are actually validated. We need to think and we need to believe that people respect what we're saying, and we need to believe that that person has my back. If those three ingredients are there, then we can be more vulnerable with our partner. And so the first thing you have to do is to create an environment. Now, if the person that you're with has trauma from either your relationship or relationships prior to yours, then that trust thing might be an issue. And so you have to reinforce the environment of trust, so that they will be willing to open up and let you know their innermost thoughts. Because like you and I, we've been vulnerable to a certain point, but we have never talked to the point that one of us is crying and the other one is kind of consoling.
Right.
And not saying that we wouldn't if that were to come up, but that to me shows a level of trust that a lot of people don't have in their fellow men. And so if you're in a relationship and your partner is willing to cry and express some of their fears and their deepest feelings, regrets, and stuff like that, then if you can create a space where they can feel like they're not being judged, where they can feel like they're being respected, where they can feel like you will offer a solution. Or if not a solution, you will be a sounding board where they can just throw out things that they might think could work, and you add your 2, 3, or 4 cents too. Then they can come up with some type of resolution that would help them move forward. And so the biggest thing you can do is to be empathetic, which means I can see myself in your shoes. And so I want to do this for you because I value your mental health. I value your happiness. I value what you bring to the table. And so we have to be selfless. And a lot of times in relationship, everybody's about me, 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 me. But sometimes you got to step out of that selfish role, because I already said most relationships start off with, you got something I want, and I'm going to try and get as much as I can with the minimum amount of effort as possible. That's what relationships are about.
Right.
How fast can I get married so I can settle down and be myself and con you into thinking you're going to get something out of me, but I'm really trying to get as much out of you as possible. And I'm being a little cynical. It's not necessarily that cut and dry, but we are selfish, and that's human nature. If you look at babies are the most selfish human beings on the face of the earth. My bottle, my mommy, my daddy, my toy, my dog, my spoon, everything is about them. And a lot of us never grow out of that. And so if you can step out of yourself and picture yourself in someone else's shoes, that to me creates a space where a person can be vulnerable. And once vulnerable, you all can identify ways to fix the problem, to address the fears, and to make life get back to a happy routine or a happy point as before.
Wow. I mean, you really unpackage that all the way. You really kind of open that right right on up. So my final aspect of this road to not only
Partition.
a healthy right is, as you deal with, the worries and the fears and being vulnerable and trying to comfort and try to reassurance. Have you ever been on a car ride and you always have that backseat driver, and the person that may not necessarily be in the back seat, they can be in the passenger seat next to you, and they're telling you where to go and what streets to turn down, and oh, slow down, and oh, here comes the
Mhm.
light. Do you see the truck in front of you? Do you see this? Do you see that? Right? It becomes this struggle, right? It
Mhm.
becomes a
Mhm.
struggle to the point where you just want to jump out of the car and let them drive, right? Like, you know what, you drive and I'll sit in the back seat, whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. So the final question tonight we want you to unpackage for us is, how do you share power equally in the relationships? And this is where it's at right here. What behaviors prevent control or dominance issues? So it's a two-parter. How do you share power equally? Is there or watch this? Is that such a thing, right? Of sharing power equally? And I'm sure you're going to break that down and what that means, and what behavior prevent control or dominance. It's actually like a loaded question, right?
It's
It,
very,
it,
very
it's,
loaded.
it's, it's, it's really loaded, and then on the back end of that is like, well, wait a minute. How do you even prevent this power issue? Go for it.
All right, so there's never ever an equal sharing of power. I came across this piece of research, and it basically goes like this: whoever loves the least runs that relationship. And if you look at it from this standpoint, the person who's more willing to walk away holds the cards. They hold the chips, because if the other one pushes too hard, the other one walks. And so the other one is always going to be second guessing themselves. And so you can never ever have an equal sharing of power. So for example, if me and my wife are walking down the street and somebody jumps out and tries to attack us, there's no equal sharing of power there. I got to step up and do my manly role, which is to fight, protect, and to serve, right? However, if we're home and something has to do with like the kids or something going on around the house, she steps up and she does her part. And so in every relationship, there's going to be roles. And I'm not saying that a woman's role is domestic. That is not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is every relationship has roles that people get into. And the best way to have a healthy relationship is to discuss those roles ahead of time. So, for example, my wife pays bills. I can't stand paying bills. So her role has been to pay the bills. Now my role is to keep quiet. Whether she does good or not, I gotta keep quiet because that's something I don't want to do. Now, like I said earlier, when the alarm went off and I had to jump up to go fight, that is one of my roles. Another role I have, I iron. I do all the ironing in the house. That's a role I had. And that's not a traditional male role, but it's the role that I took on because of strengths and weaknesses and all that stuff. Another role that I do is I clean the bathrooms, because as a kid, my wife never liked cleaning bathrooms, so I took on that role. And in return, she does the sweeping and the vacuuming. And so, what does all that mean? All that means is this: you figure out what works for you in a relationship, but it's never ever going to be equal. And as long as I have to get up in the middle of the night to go fight, it'll never be equal. I'll tell you something that was never equal. We had a house one time. Our first house had about 20 trees in the backyard, and my job was to rake the leaves in the fall. Nobody came out there and helped me. It was my role. And so I didn't go inside and I didn't overstep my boundaries, even though she might have wanted some help. I'm like, yo, I didn't get any help out there in the yard. You go do you. So it can never, ever, ever be 100% equal. That's the first thing. The second thing, how do you make sure that that people don't get taken advantage of? Well, you talk about it. You talk about what you're comfortable with. My wife did not want to do ironing. My wife did not want to do the toilets. So we talked about it. And I said, well, hey, I don't want to pay bills. So I'll give you the money, but I don't want to sit down and plan to pay bills. But what she does do is she's like, hey, you got this, 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 and that. What do you want to pay on each? So we do talk about it, but I don't call the companies. I don't make arrangements. I don't do any of that stuff. And she has all the phone numbers in her phone. My phone does not have any of those people's numbers because I don't even want to hear them. So that's another thing. So you have to figure out what works for you. But you have to have regular check-ins. Hey, am I doing okay today? Hey, did I do a good job last week of making you happy, of meeting your needs, of making sure that you felt validated as a partner and as a valued member of this relationship? So you have to talk things out. Communication is 100% the key. You have to be respectful with each other. And I heard it said best like this: whether I'm upset or not, I have to treat you like a queen and you have to treat me like a king. And so it's not, I'm upset, so I'm going to talk to you. However, no, when we're finished being upset, we still got to get back to being cordial. And so if I'm talking to you like you're a piece of trash, when everything gets back to normal, I'm still going to have resentment because of the way you spoke to me. So I'm upset with you, but you're still my queen. You're upset with me, but I'm still your king. And so we still have to talk to each other with respect, with integrity, with honesty, and with love. And I think a lot of people miss that. And then the dynamics of the relationship changes, the power dynamics change. And then people start to feel like, well, you know what? I think I want a divorce, or and whoever says they want a divorce, now all of a sudden you holding the cards. Because if the other person doesn't want to get a divorce, now you're controlling everything in the relationship, and you might be tyrannical with that control. So now every slight thing that happens, well, why don't you just walk away? Or I'll just walk away. And so now you're no longer being fair in the relationship. Now it's a relationship built on fear, not built on love, not built on communication, not built on trust. And so my viewpoint is never 100% in this relationship. Her viewpoint is never 100% in this relationship. At some point in time, you got to share with each other and come up with something in the middle, or as close to the middle as possible. Or sometimes I might say, hey, I got this. We're going to do it my way this time. And that other thing over there, we're going to do it your way because you have more experience with it. So the power dynamic changes based on who has the experience, based on who has the track record, and based on whose turn it is. And I think Chris Rock said it the best. Sometimes you play lead, sometimes you sing lead, and then sometimes you on the tambourine. And when you on the tambourine, you got to be a happy looking tambourine player. But when it's your time to sing lead, your partner has to be on that tambourine happy. Nobody wants a sad looking tambourine player. And so when the dynamic changes, when you up and you in charge, be happy. But when you down and you support person, still be happy. But when it comes to money, conversate about it and come to some consensus. When it comes to kids, conversate about it and come to some general consensus. When it comes to vacations, take turns picking places. A lot of times it's the man picking places or the woman picking places, and the other person is like, man, we keep doing your vacation. Well, open your mouth and say, hey, where we want to go, and plan it out. If your wife is a planner, she gets first dibs on where you go. If you don't want to go where she's going, you plan it and then come to her with the table and the information. But don't tell her to go someplace where she don't want to go and then make her plan it too. So it's give and take.
Well, there you have it. It is a give and take. You do not want the tow truck coming to pick up the car. It is definitely a give and take in the relationship, in the friendship, the interpersonal. It is give and take, and you have to be responsible. You have to be committed. You have to be able to say, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to say, hey, what can I do better? And then on the flip side, the other person has to be able to take criticism, have to be able to, work together, open their minds. They got to be able to say what they want. And when you do that, you're going to have a smoother ride down the road of life. And so I ask the question, as I always do at the beginning and the end, can you relate to this?
Yes, sir.
That is the question.
Yes, yes, yes.
Hey, listen, this has been a eye-opening episode, Dr. Howe. Once again, we thank you for your wisdom in being able to open our eyes to a perspective that we sometimes don't want to hear, a perspective that sometimes we don't want to take in, but we're going to give it to them anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to put it out there in the atmosphere, and so that somebody can really relate to their own personal situation, but to others who may be also going through the same thing.
Yeah, and I'm gonna try and smile less.
I'm gonna need for you to continue smiling just like you smile, because listen, with you in this world smiling, the world's gonna be a better place.
Hey, 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 I feel you, man.
All
Plus, I
right,
had braces for 10 years, so I got to show up
then
these
you got
braces.
to smile then.
I had them on for a while.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, Dr. Howe, listen, man, we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. And we look forward to seeing each of you who are viewing and who are watching. Also, join us again, give us some feedback, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, sir.